Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The ReQuest. It's me, Captain Logan, and joining me, as always, is my wonderful co-host, Austin, the Day Ghost. And tonight, we're talking about a movie that I meant to watch years ago, shortly after it first came out. This, I don't think, was a thing that I knew about in the theater, but I heard rumblings about it afterwards. Like, that sounds interesting. I should check that out. And then a couple years later, oh yeah, that thing. That sounds interesting. I should check that out. Like, 15 years later, I still never watched this movie until Stone Gaspin from Patreon made us watch it, and thanks very much to you, Stone Gaspin. The movie in question tonight is Hollywoodland, the movie about the death of George Reeves, the really mysterious, kind of conspiracy theory-laden death. This is not quite JFK level, but it's up there. It's one of those that gets talked about over the decades as a really confused, strange occurrence. People trying to figure out what exactly happened, whether or not this was a suicide, and there is, if you didn't know about it, a whole movie about it starring Ben Affleck. And we'll talk about the weirdness of the casting of all of this a little bit later. But Austin, thanks so much for joining me for one of these once again. Was this a movie that you had heard of?
No. So I have only seen that image of Ben Affleck like bursting through the fence and standing up as Superman, and it was like, oh, what is this from? Like, when did he play Superman? That's so weird. Like, it's obviously not in a Superman project. It's obviously something else.
Did you think maybe it was a Saturday Night Live sketch or something?
No, I was like, this must be a movie somewhere because it looks too good for SNL.
Yeah.
But I don't know. And then you were like, oh, we're watching a movie about George Reeves with Ben Affleck, and I was like, that's the movie.
It all comes together. It's such a small world. How much more does your life feel complete after some of the movies that we've watched for The ReQuest?
Honestly, I think I could probably drop dead today, and like it would be good. Like, it's done. I've reached that point. It's full.
Okay, but first, this is going to get dark really quickly. I was going to say, first make sure that there's a couple of random bullet holes that nobody can account for, and make sure that there's a lot of people in your life with motives. Make it really interesting.
Yeah, and then I've already worked out my technique to be able to shoot myself, but make it look like it maybe wasn't a suicide. And like, I can do it without prints.
So this is not the background of this is not a thing that I know a ton about. I read up on this a little bit years ago, but I am certainly rusty on it, and I've never done a ton of research on it. I have a book on the subject that I have not gotten around to sitting down and reading, and now I really want to do that after seeing this movie. This is one of those historical fiction movies as opposed to a straight-up biopic. So there are intentional fictitious elements. There's a completely made-up character in this movie who is the protagonist. George Reeves himself plays a little bit like a dual protagonist in his flashback scenes. There's kind of a there's kind of two character arcs unfolding simultaneously that parallel and mirror each other in the private investigator that's trying to figure out who killed George Reeves, or if it was a suicide, just in order to bolster his own career, not because he really cares or he thinks that this is an important thing to figure out. And George Reeves also is very concerned about his own legacy and concerned about looking like someone with a lot of clout and importance in Hollywood. And so these are two guys that weirdly have quite a bit in common, and one ends up being kind of a tragic story, and the other one by the end is kind of a more redemptive story. So it is a piece of fiction with that's built around a real thing that happened. And so a lot of the details are true with George Reeves' life and the background and some of the things that we see happening there. The list I found, Austin, of creative license taken with this movie was oddly thin. It seems like they got quite a bit right with George Reeves' life as far as I could tell. But again, have not done a ton of research on the subject. I saw things like there's a mention, and we'll talk about the Adventures of Superman of it all. And of course, that's the main reason anybody would care about me talking about this. Kind of exciting that we got to do a requested review that is more connected to things that we talk about on the channel a lot. So tonight we're doing a whole Adventures of Superman thing. When we're finished with this review, we're going to go on and do a blind commentary on Superman and the Mole Men, which is the first thing that George Reeves shot for Superman as a feature, but it also doubled as the pilot for that show. But anyway, I was going to say, in that list, Austin, there was this... There was a mention of that scene where George Reeves is kind of like, he's never excited about playing this character, but for a second he's like, okay, great, at least I'm not going to have to wear the stupid black and white tights anymore. They're going to move it to color. And that doesn't happen in season 2, like they say in the movie. It happens in season 3. So there's just like little things like that. And also some urban legends that seem to be uncorroborated or maybe not true at all, that the movie kind of plays as fact, but gets away with that kind of thing really easily because it is a fictional piece in the first place. So, I mean, I think that our conversation about how much creative license can you take with a thing like this is probably going to be shorter this time around, because it's a fictional piece in the first place, so I think it's kind of easier to take those kinds of liberties.
Yeah, no, I had that kind of thought where it's more of, and that's more fictional than this is, obviously, but it's on the line of like a Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where it's like you're around like an actual event, but like, we're following people that didn't exist. We're not really going into like a lot of like real stuff. Like we are doing it, like it is a fictional piece, and I do think you kind of know that while you're watching it.
Maybe you do and maybe you don't, right? Because I mean, and I'm not saying that the movie needed to...
I guess it doesn't like come out and say like...
I think there's 6 seconds of reading you have to do before you watch this.
That is probably true. Yeah.
I always say that all I really care about with a biopic or a based on a true story kind of thing is that the story itself is good. And we've had this conversation ad nauseum, but like I can look up what really happened later, and if the actual real life events are more interesting, or if we seem to be a little bit too exploitative about it, that can maybe hurt the narrative a little bit. But I don't like to have too much of a prerequisite going into a movie, especially a thing that has, any fictional components at all. Like, is it a good story? That's really all I care about. It's more complicated sometimes with a thing like this, where I can be led to decide, okay, that's maybe not all I care about. Maybe you and I have talked about this with maybe just in private, I forget, but with the Queen movie, for instance, that like
it was on After Dark. We talked about that.
I could tell something was off with that, even not knowing all that much about that man. And then when I read up on it later and realized how much more interesting his life was and how much cooler of a movie you could have told and how really cookie cutter that story was, and again how kind of exploitative, if that's the right word, sensationalist it was about it, is like, oh, okay, that's not the way we should have handled that material. But I guess I'm only mentioning all of that again to say that going into a thing like this, I don't really care because, like if this is a real person or not, because it's a well-constructed narrative, it's a well-constructed story. But I couldn't necessarily tell just watching it if that investigator was a real person or not. And I actually didn't know that until I looked it up later. It felt like probably a made-up thing, but I didn't know for sure. And we do this a lot with things like this, by the way, where you'll take like a amalgamated group of people and turn them into one character. That's not really what we did with this, but like it reminded me of movies that do that kind of thing, where we kind of simplify it for the sake of a narrative.
Yeah, and that kind of stuff doesn't bother me. Like Rocket Man does a thing like that where he's got like a girlfriend at the beginning of the movie, and it's I think like three people that were kind of like combined into one. It's like, yeah, you're not gonna go through all three of them in like you're like in like 2 minutes.
Was it Zodiac that did that?
I've actually never seen Zodiac, but I was thinking about that, wondering like how this compares to that, because they're both like true crime, like murder mystery things where we don't actually know who did it.
Yeah.
So I the entire time I was like, oh, like I'd like to watch Zodiac now because I want to see how that kind of compares to this.
So I'll tell you, the first 2/3 of that movie is fantastic, and then I forgot to finish it, and I've never gone back to that movie.
I thought you were going.
No, I was loving it, and then for some kid, you get married, you have kids, things come up, and this was years ago. I was watching that movie, and I think it was. By the way, DJ was in the comments earlier, so hi to him. But I think DJ told me that it may have been somebody else, but I think it was DJ that told me that he had the same thing with that movie. He seemed like part of it, like half or the majority of it, never finished it for some reason.
Oh my god, that's amazing. I guess just like the real Zodiac, you just couldn't get there.
And that's also weird because I'm jumping around, but Mark Ruffalo is in that movie, and he was one of the like half a dozen people that was considered for George Reeves in this movie.
Oh, weird.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can picture him in that role. That's strange.
I don't know if I can picture a lot of the people they were looking at.
Oh, is it one of those things?
It is one of those things, yeah. Let me see if I can find a list here. Hugh Jackman, Colin Firth.
That's very against type at that point. DJ does say it was him that couldn't finish.
It was him, yeah. That's hilarious.
Okay,
but yeah,
tonight I'm gonna start watching that movie and I'm gonna turn it off.
Just so you can have the same experience as the rest of it. Wait like 3 years and then go back to it and finish it. I was also reminded of, and I talked to you about this in private already, but I was also reminded of the O.J. Simpson miniseries in the way the movie handles the ambiguity of the crime itself. In that case, arguably, maybe not so much. A little bit more cut and dry than this, but we don't know exactly all the details. We don't know for sure what happened. I think 99% of people at this point would tell you that O.J. Simpson probably did kill his ex-wife, but we don't know exactly how it happened, and he continues to presume his own innocence, or claim his own innocence, and so that show doesn't show you what exactly happens. It doesn't fictionalize the deaths of the two people that he allegedly killed. This handles it very similarly, but it's even more mysterious because we don't have we don't have enough information, enough clues to tell precisely what happened at all. There are kind of 3 working theories in the movie, and one seems as plausible as the next. And that's, I think, part of the reason that this captured people's imagination so much. Back then, a lot of it was just, and I like how the movie captures this. A lot of it was the children across the land were, across the country were wrecked by this, and I don't think it overplays that. I think that's probably exactly what that was like, and it was, Superman is dead. I have this bizarre fascination with the idea of the death of Superman in all of its forms, and so that always resonates with me for whatever reason.
That was the bullet doomsday. Jumped out and got him.
I almost made a too soon joke. But then and I don't mean to poke fun at this too much because it is a really obviously tragic, sad event, and the way at least the movie portrays George Reeves, it's clear that he died a very unhappy person, and whether he was murdered or whether he committed suicide, it was an awful way to go, and he died unfulfilled, and I think I agree with the movie's sentiment at the end that he didn't appreciate what he had. That was kind of the thing that most resonated with me about this. The idea that at the end of the day, the best and maybe easiest way to find happiness is through the innocence of childhood, and bringing all that back around to Superman and the ideals of Superman and what it means to children. I thought was kind of the stroke of genius, the stroke of brilliance by the end of this movie. But I was just going to say that what would have made it really interesting back then is just somebody killed Superman. People, the only thing a lot of people knew him for was that role where he's playing an alien who can get shot by bullets and they bounce off, and somebody maybe murdered him or he committed suicide. So if he did it, it's very against character, against type for Superman, and you really want the guy playing Superman to have the ideals of Superman. You get to Christopher Reeve, so bizarre that those two guys had really similar last names. You get to and the tragedies that they had in their lives. You get to Christopher Reeve, and people saw him much more as embodying the ideal of Superman. They really, really wanted that for George Reeves, and the movie suggests that he did not have that at all. I don't know enough about the real life person to know if the movie kind of pushes that idea too hard or not. But
just the way you were talking about it, like it's kind of like a bigger like Kurt Cobain thing, like where there's a lot of people that look at that and go, like, I don't know if he actually killed himself, but obviously this is much more I would think maybe not wider scale in the terms of it's a lot longer ago, but like in the more people maybe debate what actually happened.
Senior Sticks, yeah, I agree with that. Well, and this is honestly not a thing I've heard come up a lot more recently, and kind of nice to be reminded that this is still a mystery that goes unsolved, that we'll never know the answer to. It's weird. Like, we might have finally found Amelia Earhart, but we still will never know the answer to this question. We got a $2 super chat from Senior Sticks. Is Affleck a better Superman or 2000 Batman? 2000. 2016, but sure. I'm not sure why you said 2000s. I have such a hard time with that because, like a lot of people, I like his casting choice and some of the things he brings to the performance for his Batman, but the material itself, I don't think works, and you can see in his performance how frustrated he is with some of it. And I didn't see him really play Superman. I saw him play a guy who played Superman and who was very ironically disenfranchised and frustrated with the role in the same way that he is when he plays Batman. I mean, you can see a lot of the man in the character is a real life person, but the character that he's playing here, and he already had a lot of that kind of frustration in his own life, in not working for a couple of years before this, and like dealing with paparazzi and things like that, and it's really kind of sad and tragic to consider that he's dealing with all of that again, and in maybe a more dramatic way, even during and right after he plays Batman.
Yeah, I was talking to Josh about it today, because he was a big fan of Superman, and he went like, "Oh, you guys are watching this? Okay, I'm gonna watch it tonight so I can watch this review." Because he was really excited to hear us talk about this. And
had he seen it before?
No. And I was like, yeah, Ben Affleck, I really like him in the moments where he's playing George Reeves, playing Superman. But when he's playing George Reeves, I just kind of see Ben Affleck. And he went, I wonder if that's maybe because he looked at that role and he saw himself in it and he kind of brought that to it. And I was like, huh, that's kind of interesting. I didn't really think about that. But...
It's really, I think that's the reason that he took the role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I hadn't really thought about it, and when he said it, it kind of clicked, and it was like, oh, yeah, I wonder if that maybe is why.
And he's also just kind of typecast as mopey people.
Well, he was like stoner guy, I think, at first, and then like mopey guy, I think.
But like I've seen him in so many roles now where he has that kind of like vacant stare of I don't know if I even want to be alive anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, on
Yeah,
top of
interviews and he's
I
still
probably
playing
just
that role.
it's really sad. I mean, we don't mean to be
Yeah.
crass, but like it's it's because I think I like Ben Affleck as a guy.
Yeah, like I don't
Or as much as I can, not knowing
Yeah.
the guy personally, obviously, but just from, things I've read about him and interviews and things, I think that he's gotten kind of a rotten deal a lot, and I also think that when he's made his own mistakes, he tends to be very open and fesses up to those things. Just from what little I know, like he seems like, a pretty stand-up guy that has just had a rough life, relatively.
Yeah, and like
Which kind of makes him perfect for this role.
Yeah.
The big difference between him and, let me say this real quick, the big difference between him and George Reeves is, at least according to this movie, George Reeves saw superheroes as most people would have at the time, to be fair, as real lowbrow, just for children, kind of like superficial narrative that's not really about anything and is just cheap melodrama. And Ben Affleck really wanted to play a superhero, and like he did Daredevil and regretted it, and he did Batman and he regretted it, and this is a movie about a guy who plays Superman, and because he's desperate for work and he just wants some kind of notoriety, and he gets that and he hates it because he just gets typecast. And Ben Affleck doesn't get typecast necessarily as superheroes. He keeps wanting to play them and he keeps getting burned by them. Like in that way, it's this weird mirror for Ben Affleck, but everything else about it is kind of autobiographical in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I have always found that kind of like Hollywood story really interesting, where you have a person who gets like that one role that's maybe like it's like a stepping stool to like bigger and better things, and then they kind of get known as that. It's your kind of Adam West Batman thing, and then that just kind of like holds on their career their entire life. And some actors, I think, really resent that. Others, grow eventually to accept that and just kind of go like,
like Adam West
Batman, like Adam West.
Well,
Adam West kind of goes to like the first point and then goes into the second, right? Like,
you can
starts
see
resenting it.
Yes, and I was going to say that. George Reeves wasn't given the chance to have that happen, or he didn't give himself the chance, depending on what happened, right? He might have killed himself, or he might have been murdered. We'll never know. Adam West, you can see the stages of grief through his career.
If George Reeves, like when the Christopher Reeve movie came out, if George Reeves would maybe be like, "Oh, hey, like Superman, like I'm more like accepting of this, like I don't know."
Given some distance, he might have been. Kirk Allen had that.
Kirk Allen.
So Kirk Allen is the original serials Superman, and he plays it with the actress that we'll see later tonight in our other video.
Cool.
Who is the original Lois Lane? Played her in the serials, and then she is cast again in Superman and the Mole Men, the feature that is the pilot for the series also. I think some stuff is cut out of it. I think all the Mole Men stuff is apparently cut out of it for TV, which is why I wanted to watch the movie and see what it was. Because somebody left a comment when I posted about this earlier that we were going to do this and was like, well, you could just watch the pilot. It's the same thing. And I'm like, is it though? They apparently cut out all the stuff that made the title The Mole Men, but I don't know how much that is there because I've never seen it. So
and Josh gave me a get ready for the Mole Men, and I was like, don't tell me more. I'm excited.
I've always meant to see it, and I just never got around to it. But anyway, so she is Phyllis, I forget her last name. She's the original Lois Lane, plays it with Kirk Allen. Kirk Allen had... And then George Reeves, of course, gets the TV show, gets that. I want to say she's there through the first season or two, and then Noel Neal
takes... for the first.
And then Noel Neal takes over for the rest of it.
I looked into that yesterday. I was kind of looking at like what was going on with that, and I saw that.
But anyway, what was I saying? And let's see, Mole Men TV show. I can't remember where I was going with all that.
Well, we were talking about how
Oh yeah,
kind of roles like way on
Kirk
actors.
Allen was
Kirk Allen.
also typecast. And had a very difficult time getting roles after that. By the way, for just a second, can I be irritating and break down that term for a minute? What does typecast mean? Does typecast mean that because I hear it as both of these things and they're almost contradictory concepts? Does typecast mean that when you get a role that you're really known for, you can't find any more work after that because everyone just sees you as that thing? We have that scene in this movie where, and by the way, this was one of those urban legends where this didn't apparently actually happen, but was talked about like it did for years, where there's a screening for On the Waterfront, is that the movie? And
Something like that, yeah.
And George Reeves is in that movie, and it's like a serious movie. It's the kind of thing that he's trying to get notoriety for, and then he gets laughed at by a screen test audience. Apparently, the movie was never screened, and in real life, and they cut all of his scenes out. But apparently, there wasn't any more than that actually in real life shot. And so, like, it might have been reduced from the original script, but they didn't shoot any more than that, so that didn't really happen, apparently. But anyway, does typecast mean that, where, like, everyone knows you for Superman, or knows you for Batman? Or does typecast mean that you just keep getting the same kind of role over and over again?
It's when you play something and you get, like, known for, like, that kind of role, and then you get, like, that role and that role, and, like, you just play that over and over again. Like, I would say Tom Holland kind of has that, because he plays Spider-Man, and then everything else just wants him to do that Spider-Man performance. So, like, he'll be in, like, that Pixar movie or, like, Uncharted, and it's just, okay, do that again. But, like, he can do more than.
But that's not true typecasting, because he'll sometimes get roles that aren't that.
That's true. That's lighter, but I was just using that as an example.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. But we also use that term a lot, right? Or we hear that term a lot when somebody's like, oh, they couldn't, like, you always hear William Shatner was typecast. Well, no, he wasn't. He didn't keep playing guys like Kirk necessarily. He just couldn't get a lot of other roles after that for a while. Same thing with Adam West. Typecast as Batman. I mean, I guess later in life that was true. But when he couldn't get work at all, that's not typecast. That's that's being put out the pasture. I'm sad to say, like.
Yeah, no, I was.
That's being washed out or whatever. I can't think of a non-derogatory way to put this.
Yeah, no, I mainly hear it with just being cast in the same kind of role. I don't hear it super often with like, oh, you can't really get work anymore because of a certain role.
Well, I'm older than you, and I heard that all growing up in the 90s. Like, all the Star Trek actors, they're all typecast. They're not in anything. And I find myself I did it earlier in the video, I think. I find myself using it because I got so used to hearing that, but I don't think that's actually what it means. Anyway, sorry about that 5-minute rant about typecasting. I think it's fascinating how much things have changed now with that idea of typecasting, or that idea of not being able to get work after you're super known for a thing. It's almost flipped in a way now, right? Like, that Hollywood does not exist anymore and hasn't for quite a while. I mean, first of all, everybody's trying to get into superhero things because that's like what's making Hollywood churn now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like instead of like, okay, you're Superman, you can't do anything except for Superman now. It's like, okay, you're Superman. All of these other movies will now cast you, but they will just want you to play Superman.
Yeah.
And, like, it seems like we get much more actual typecasting in that way, you know, as opposed to just like, oh, you are Star-Lord, you can't be in a movie again. Like, everybody just thinks you're Star-Lord. It's like, no, you can have like $1 billion Jurassic World whatever movie and your Guardians of the Galaxy movie, and people aren't going for the actor, they're going for, franchise name. It's more so about that.
Yeah, you just have, and that's that thing that what's his name, who played Falcon, talks
Oh,
about,
Anthony
where like
Mackie.
Anthony Mackie, yeah, we're like, there's no movie stars anymore. Like people don't want Anthony Mackie, they want Falcon, and like I think he was so spot on about that.
He was, except for the fact that people want Falcon. But the idea outside of that is spot on.
Whatever, I love Falcon. I didn't like that show, but I love Falcon, and I
I'm
don't
sure
care.
Endgame sold 1 billion tickets because they're like, oh, Falcon.
Falcon.
Back.
Yeah, but he had a point.
No, I know.
And so, like, now you can, I don't know, you could be George Reeves now. I mean, except for the fact that, like, Warner Brothers won't make a real Superman movie, or at least, hasn't in a long time. But, you could be a George Reeves playing a really popular superhero and have that notoriety and stay really popular and relevant, if only you're okay with not spreading your wings and being versatile and challenging yourself as an actor. And I imagine, I mean, like, Birdman was about this to some degree, and like, even as of like early mid 2000s, we were still telling, or like late 2000s, we were still telling stories about this.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood's all about this too, where the main actor was like a 60s or maybe 50s TV actor, and now he can't get roles anymore. He has to be like the guest villain on whatever show. That's like the best he can do.
Well, and that's a thing now that's really interesting, is that the characters that, to your point, like the actors that really get to spread their wings kind of disappear in roles and are character actors. And like that's always been the case to some degree, where like some of our best actors, a lot of people don't even know who they are, because the whole point is that they can disappear and then they don't really get to be movie stars. And somebody like George Reeves wants to have his cake and eat it too, where like he wants to be, and he mentioned actors from that time that had this, like your Clark Gables and stuff, where you're known for all these different roles, but you have a very recognizable face and everybody knows who you are, and he just wants that sense of importance.
Yeah, no, exactly. He needed a universal. He needed to be cast in like a Universal monster movie like 10 years earlier, where they're like, "Oh, we have this one actor. Keep casting him in all our other movies." That's how we get our leads.
Well, we're kind of just using this to facilitate discussion about Hollywood and about where we're at now. Let's talk a little bit more about the movie itself. Somebody mentioned that, I think it was Senior Sticks, that part of the issue also was TV versus movies. And that's a thing that I wish the movie would get into a little bit more. Because it's not just a matter of... Like I don't think we talk enough about what... George Reeves and people with his attitude would have felt about TV acting versus movie acting, because there was a massive divide, right? Like, you didn't see a lot of people that crossed the streams with that, and he jumped back and forth very much, and that's part of the reason that he would have had difficulty getting back to being the A-list movie actor that he wanted to be, is because he took a TV role. It's not just that it was a lowbrow TV role, it's that TV was not considered as it wouldn't have given you the notoriety that movies did.
No, it's only been in like the last like 10 years, I'd say, that you see more actors jumping back and forth.
I would say like 20.
I think like more so. Like if you go back further, you start to like blur the lines. But
that's what I'm saying is like
yeah.
Early 2000, 2001, 2002, you start seeing it with stuff like Kiefer Sutherland with 24, where he was, and it happened with several guys like that, where they made the move and they become TV guys. You see a lot more jumping back and forth now, certainly, and a lot of that's just because the lines are blurred about what counts because of streaming and stuff, and you, I don't know, you can make things that people consider, I don't know, sophisticated, that was just on TV in the first place in a way that was a lot harder to do back then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. But you're right. They probably should have gone a little bit more into that element because once you got made it to TV, you were kind of stuck there. Unless they did the Superman movie and brought him back for that instead of obviously like
Kirk
that's
Allen.
just 20 years later. But you know what I mean? Like kind of like the Star Trek thing
Oh,
where
I
you
see
go,
what you're
okay,
saying.
we're making the movie, bring the TV people up.
Yeah, and then it's like, okay, great, like we're on the big screen now, but we're still doing the same thing we were doing before that we've been trying to get out of. Like the only way we can be seen again is to do the thing that we were doing before. So you find yourself sympathizing with him to some degree, but then I also find myself agreeing with when you put it in the perspective of the character parallel of the true protagonist of the piece, right? You get to the end and you have that great discussion between the our main character, the private investigator, and I didn't even have you do a synopsis at the beginning. I kind of just took over and did it. You have the conversation between him and the lead investigator of the police, or the police chief, I forget who he is, who says like, I don't know if George Reeves could have ever been a true movie star, but why did it matter? Didn't he do enough for a life? I really like that line, where he says like he got to be Superman. He got to be in the limelight. He did a show for 6 years. Shouldn't that be enough for a life for most people? And that resonated with me, and I found myself really kind of agreeing with that. And then when you compare that to the kind of perspective that our main character gets by the end, when he goes, "Oh shoot, I've been neglecting my kid, and I already kind of have what matters." Again, I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to childhood, and it all comes down to the way that you affect other people regardless of your stature in life. Where like, and again, I love what that it has to say about Superman as an idea. Like, I think the movie is in a roundabout way very much about Superman, even though Superman gets buried in it a little, it feels like. And then if you think about it as a Superman fan, I think you can watch this on a couple levels. I think it's easy to see this movie and not think about Superman at all, except for just in a surface way, in like, it's the background of the thing. The guy played Superman. That gives it this whole kind of thematic layer, this kind of undercurrent that you wouldn't have otherwise. Like, George Reeves is the anti-Superman, sadly, tragically. And this guy at the end, who's been investigating him, learns the importance of what Superman's all about in realizing the negative ways that he's impacting people, the cause and effect that he never got before, because he's neglecting his regular clientele, and the guy who he's supposed to be helping and investigating his wife's relationship, because all he's in it for is the money, and he thinks this is going to get him fame and make him more money. That guy goes and kills his wife.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Whoa. Yeah, no.
And so the point is, everyone's a role model.
Yeah, and I really liked, like you said, the kind of relationship with kids in Superman, and the way that, like, kind of every kid is like deeply depressed at the news that Superman's dead, and the way that our main character, because part of how he's kind of like how he's investigating is that he wants it kind of more out in the open so that people will be talking about it, and kind of put pressure on the cops to like open up the case again. And so because of that, he gets it into the news with, like, the big, like, Superman killed himself headline, but he isn't taking into account how that's affecting, like, his kid who loved Superman.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he keeps trying to get his kid to get over it and buck up, and he doesn't want to let his kid go through the grieving process.
Yeah, it's like almost that, like, you can't be soft about it type thing.
Yeah, and like, why do you care? This wasn't a. I love that speech he has at the beginning. Like, we've been through what fiction is. Like, I taught you this is all pretend. The kid gets that. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and he can't understand, why the kid would burn his Superman costume because he really wanted it in the first place.
Yeah, and I didn't think about that, but isn't it interesting that George Reeves also does that?
Oh yeah, almost the exact same way too. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
out on the grill, but he's celebrating because he doesn't have to play the role anymore.
Hmm. Yeah, which of course, because the kids more so embody the Superman kind of ideal, while George Reeves, as you said, is more the anti-Superman. Or not like fully anti. It's like he's running around killing people, but like
Yeah,
he's
no, of course,
not
but
really Superman.
he's playing the role and not understanding why it matters to people and not appreciating the positive impact that he's having on children. He's made more sympathetic by the occasional negative impact that it has on children. However, I mean, I like that he's a real person. I think that's the importance of the scene. And again, this was apparently an urban legend that Reeves claimed, but nobody could corroborate, so we don't know if it really happened, that he does a public appearance that in the movie he doesn't want to do, he hates. It reminded me a little bit of the tour that Captain America has to go on in the First Avenger.
Oh yeah.
And there's a kid that goes up to him with a loaded weapon and says, "If I fire this at you," there's just no security in the 50s. If I fire this at
Superman.
you, will the bullet bounce off? And George Reeves intelligently says, "Well, you don't want to do that because it will bounce off, but it might hit somebody, it might ricochet and hit somebody else," which is kind of the thematic crux of the piece.
No, and
If you think about it, like the ways in which your actions that you think are totally innocuous. I mean, like we talk about power and responsibility on the channel all the time, but it is what that is, right? It's the way that your actions can ricochet. Because we talked about the thing at the end where the investigator is realizing the negative impact that he's accidentally happening with the guy who kills his wife, but he also is horrified to find out that George Reeves' mother doesn't actually care whether or not he was murdered. It's just about the notoriety, and he's like, oh, our hearts are not in the right place, and I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And the kid scene itself with the gun, I think, is like up there with some of the best Superman scenes, like on film. It's really good.
That's a good point. That is just kind of a straight up Superman. So, like, what would Superman say in that case? Like,
Yeah.
maybe the same thing that Reeves said, which is kind of interesting because we're making the case that he wasn't enough like Superman.
Yeah, it's almost like I was thinking there's that scene in All Star where he like talks the girl down when she's like gonna kill herself, like almost like that, where you kind of just have a moment where Superman just kind of he could plow straight through this person. Obviously he can't because he's George Reeves, but he's playing Superman, and it's like, no, kid, like think about it for a second, like let's have an actual conversation.
Stone Gassman, who again requested this, is here in the comments tonight, and he says that kid allegedly asked if he shot Superman, would he bleed? Senior Sticks, cat back in the 50s, toy guns and real guns look the same. Okay, that's what's funny about that is I didn't really feel the weight of that scene until I realized that the gun was supposed to be real. Like, it took me a long time to realize, yeah, because I figured he just had a toy gun. They look the same. And then suddenly the way it's directed and the way they shoot that, I'm like, I'm pretty sure that everything visually about this is telling me that George Reeves' life is in danger. And it took me far too long to realize this. And then I still wasn't 100% sure about it until I read some background on this movie and discovered that that was an urban legend, that there was a kid with a loaded weapon, and that's what they were dramatizing there. And I was like, okay, so it is supposed to be a real gun. How on earth do you make that completely clear to an audience? Like, in in a scene that takes place in the early 50s. I don't think you can. I don't think that's possible.
That's funny. I had the opposite. I was like, "Oh, he's got like a real gun." I bet the joke is gonna be he's gonna like pull the trigger and it's a toy gun. So I had the exact opposite.
Are you joking right now, or did you actually have that?
No, I actually had that during the movie. I
That's
thought that.
really funny. Well, do you want to talk about the elephant in the room? Because weirdly, like 44 minutes in, we haven't mentioned this yet. So the casting in this movie retroactively is so very strange. You have
Adrian Brody's in this movie. That's all.
He's really good.
Yeah.
He's talking about the main character, who reminded me a lot of, and you won't know about this, I don't think, but he reminded me a lot of the character Doyle from the first season of Angel, who was one of only 3 main cast members in that show for a while, and he was written out midway through the first season, and that actor tragically died shortly thereafter. He had a major drug problem and stuff, and was in the middle of making that show. But anyway, and that's neither here nor there, except this movie is so much about that kind of thing. But he has almost exactly the same look. I can't remember that guy's name is that actor. And his performance was really similar, and he had that kind of like classic Irish look. And I just kept thinking about that guy the whole way through. But anyway, and there's also an episode of first season Angel that is all about the rigors of trying to make it in Hollywood and wanting to stay young for as long as possible, because you can't get the roles that you want. You can't be a movie star after that. So I was thinking about Angel a lot through this.
Oh, okay, interesting. I was thinking that when we do Clayface in the Batman, we should maybe look at some of this stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. Especially because that's kind of an out-of-time thing to some degree, so you can go back to old Hollywood a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
So you have an actor who later will play Batman, who is dating and a woman who is cheating on her husband and claims that they're in an open relationship. That is debatable. That is unlikely. Who played Martha Kent in the same movie, and just trying to get my head around those actors dating in a thing.
Well, it's okay, so it's even weirder, because the original idea Snyder had was that Batman was going to sleep with Lois, and they were going to have like a kid that then Superman comes back and he has to raise with Lois after Batman dies. But now we have Batman pretending to be Superman to sleep with Superman's mom, who's also secretly married to Super Mario. It's like so
See, I can't say the Super Mario thing, because he's just typecast as people named Eddie, apparently. Because, of course, his most famous role is in Roger Rabbit, and he's Eddie Valiant in that. And every time they said Eddie, I was just like, yeah, I'm looking at Eddie Valiant again. Except he's like evil Eddie Valiant. And also, that's a movie about the problems with Hollywood, too, to some degree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then...
So, yeah, that's really... So, yeah, I'll never see... Thomas Lowe, I'll never see the Why Did You Say That Name scene the same way again. It's very strange.
Well, especially, yeah, because he's like, you gotta say...
Wait, that's your mom? Your mom bought me a house!
Your mom thought that I was you, and then we kissed.
We did more than that. And then your mom told me that I was a terrible actor and I would never amount to anything, and was just using me to get... to feel important again and to get some kind of notoriety. And isn't it interesting that she kept preaching for more malicious reasons the kind of positive message of the movie, that he really should have appreciated what he had, and that like maybe playing Superman was worthwhile. Like, she's the only person in his life that thinks he should be doing that, and for all the wrong reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's a really well-constructed character piece.
Yeah,
especially given that it has to play with real life things that actually happen. And I don't know, it feels like a thing plays storytelling wise.
yeah, like it's just, I mean, the George Reeves thing in general seems like it's so
Stranger than fiction kind of thing.
stranger than fiction, exactly. Yeah, so it's just kind of like, oh. You're able to just kind of piece it together perfectly in that way.
Uh, we're already 50 minutes into this review somehow. I don't know how that happened. So let's get critical for just a second. You mentioned that it's hard not to just see Ben Affleck, except for when he's playing Superman. I agree when he's playing George Reeves playing Superman. I agree with that 100%. I also wonder how much George Reeves is putting on a voice when he plays Superman versus what he actually sounded like when he was just talking to people, because Ben Affleck does that. When he's Superman, he's like doing a voice, and then when he's not Superman, he's just Ben Affleck. Mm-hmm. And I kind of wonder if that's right or not. He was, and again, it's not the most important thing if it's historically accurate. I just wondered if the performance was inconsistent or not, because he apparently watched. Get this, because you said, well, he takes the role because he sees himself in George Reeves. Maybe he doesn't even really need to work that hard at acting like George Reeves. But he tried to. That's what's so weird about it. He watched every episode of Adventures of Superman.
Yeah.
He listened to reams of tape trying to get George Reeves' voice down. I don't understand that. He's not really doing that for most of the movie, and there's like 5 minutes tops where knowing anything about that show would help you. I don't know why he did that. You know, like, I respect him for it, but it's almost like you'd have to not read a script first before you would think to do that. Like, I don't know. I wouldn't read the script and think that I really needed to know all that much about that TV show.
Well, and I also wonder, like, how true some of the stuff was that they were showing about them filming it. I didn't really look into it. But stuff like, I mean, I would assume this probably happened, like where he falls off the wiring and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The weirdest one was when he like takes his pants off during the one scene. I don't know if that happened. That's weird.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder, now that I'm thinking about it, because I read up a little bit on Kirk Allen today too, and I wonder if a couple of those things might have been kind of transposed from stories that Kirk Allen would tell about his time playing Superman, because I think it's him. I don't think I'm conflating this with a George Reeves story. Again, I'm not an expert, and I spent all of 20 minutes looking up stuff today, and I must be regurgitating every single fact that I read today. But I read something about Kirk Allen saying that he was asked in an audition to play Superman to take his pants off, and thought that was weird. Didn't know why they asked him to do that. So it's weird that that's in this movie. But also, they had problems with a flying rig in the serials, which is why they went to rotoscoping. I don't know if you know about that. Where like when Kirk,
I didn't know. I don't know anything about the serials or the George Reeves show.
I've never watched all the way through. I've seen the first couple episodes of his serial, and it's really interesting. There's the Krypton stuff that we all know is kind of just verbatim there from the beginning. It's really interesting. Like,
cool.
It's structured strangely like Donner. Like, there's no way Donner didn't go back and look at the serials. Or if he didn't, that would surprise me. Because the whole first episode is Krypton. Like, they just dramatized the destruction of Krypton. Just like Donner does, just like the animated series does. Like, I wasn't expecting that. They have a Jor-El. He's pretty good. But anyway, in that show, whenever he would fly, they just switched to animation. It's weird. Like, the actor does this, and then he turns into an animated character.
Oh my god.
It's very strange to look at.
Josh just says that he thinks that the wire did break, and that gave birth to the idea that in Adventures of Superman, that Superman would fall into frame.
Yeah, that makes sense. And they had a rig in that show, because I've seen it in person. It's at the Superman Museum in Metropolis, Illinois, and but it was just for him doing this, and he would do the like side flying, and then.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so it's like the Adam West, like the climbing up the.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome still, though.
Yeah, it's great. Although I guess they could have had him do this and then just tilt it, right?
Probably. I don't know. It's the 50s. People didn't know what they were doing.
I never thought of that. Okay, what else should we mention about this movie? We've been talking about it for a while, and I feel like there's stuff that we haven't scratched, but...
I don't know. This is just like a pretty fun... Maybe not fun's the right word. But a pretty interesting, just kind of like noir detective movie, while also being like a seedy Hollywood kind of thing. It's
real somber. In fact, I said let's get a little bit critical. I think it might be compensating a little bit too much occasionally, in trying really hard not to be too idealized. Because I appreciate that. It's a 1950s that's not at all idealized. Like, it feels, there's grit to it. It feels real. Sometimes I felt like in the language department we maybe went a little bit too far, just in going like, look, people in the 50s talked like real people. I'm like, yeah, but they talk like real people a lot here. You know what I mean? Like,
I think I know the exact line you're talking about.
I'm not saying that nobody would have said that in the 50s. And I appreciate that there's a place where somebody...
that I was right.
There's a place where somebody drops an F-bomb and somebody else is like, look, language, like, we don't talk like that in polite company. Because, yeah, it was like that, certainly. A lot more so than now, obviously. But I don't know, it's hard to articulate. It felt in places like they were, like the production is expecting the criticism... It's an idealized 50s. We're looking at it through rose-tinted glasses. And so they're pushing against that, and they want to make sure that nobody would ever say that. Like, they accomplished that.
Yeah, and I looked a little bit into reviews, and it seemed like a lot of people thought this movie was really slow.
I read that too. Did you have that?
Not in the sense that I was, like, bored or anything. Like, it's got that, like, kind of... It's slow in the way that something like The Batman is slow, you know, where it's like just like a noir detective. Like, there's a lot of kind of going from place to place, like being more methodical,
like deliberate before slow.
Yeah, exactly. But not like deliberately slow in the way that I think a lot of things are, where like I think a lot of shows have this mentality that slow equals smart, and I don't think that this had that. It's just like, you know, it's more, I don't want to say thoughtful, but like it's just more like going around kind of doing the detective thing.
I mean, I don't mind using the word thoughtful. I appreciate that for a thing that's a lot more about the character work, I think. It is a good murder mystery, and the kind where there can't be an answer, and it gives you all the pieces and makes it as difficult to solve as it's supposed to be, and it makes you believe the potential for all of the different permeations of it. I like that we get in our protagonist's head as he imagines all the different variations. And I don't know about you, I got to the end and I thought, like I said earlier, I thought they all seemed plausible. Like I thought Diane Lane's character could have done it. I thought he maybe the most plausible is that he kills himself, but then it's like, where do the bullets come from? You know, oddly, I actually think the least likely thing is the conspiracy with the manager of Golden
MGM.
Bear. Yeah, I actually that's the least likely. Just looking at the fiction, I'm talking narratively now, because I don't know enough about what actually happens, and I don't know if there's, I want to look into this. I don't know if there are a lot of pieces that the movie doesn't give us, but just for what we need for the sake of the story, the argument in the movie is, he sends thugs to beat up the private detective. And would he do that if he wasn't culpable? But yeah, he might, because the guy's looking too close into him, and there might be the guy's really seedy, right? Like, there's other things that, and he doesn't confirm or deny it. He says, prove it, repeatedly. That doesn't mean he did it.
Yeah, and I don't know enough about the history. I don't know if this guy was the same like head of MGM when like The Wizard of Oz came out, because it was like 20 years earlier.
Yeah.
Um, but like I watched a documentary about the making of that recently, and
Oh,
like
interesting.
MGM is nuts. The behind the scenes of that movie is insane.
I wasn't sure he had enough motive. Again, just in the fiction,
Yeah.
because
Well, I did kind of think when like when it goes to her crying in the car, I was like, oh, we're gonna set up like maybe she's gonna walk in and shoot him, and then when it kind of goes back to the house and you see him and he like hires an assassin, it was kind of like, it's a bit of a leap, I think. So I would agree, like that is the least
well,
likely.
wouldn't the motive just be he slept with his wife? I'm not sure. It's kind of a trophy wife situation. I don't know how much he would care. The more I'm thinking about it, maybe she was right about the open relationship thing. Like, I'm not sure I'm buying that would have been enough to for him to hire somebody to off him.
Hmm.
Unless there's more to it that I'm not understanding on one watch.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. He's not in the movie a ton, so
No, which is sad because the casting is really good.
exactly. He didn't even get okay. His version of the story should have been he walks in and he jumps on George Reeves' head.
Would you stop it? He should have just picked him up and kissed him right in the mouth. Please.
Exactly. That's how he dies.
I'm certainly feeling this movie. I thought it was at the end of the day quite wonderful. I guess my main gripe is just in like I don't want to be fanboyish about it. I don't want to be like, well, I'm like a Superman guy and his playing Superman is what's interesting, because it's Superman's much more interesting as an idea than the history of the making of that show. And yet I still felt like we didn't live in the production of that enough. And if it had been made by Warner Brothers, I think we would have. I think the biggest... I meant to say this earlier. I think the most unfortunate thing about this is just that Miramax put it out and that it wasn't a Warner Brothers thing. Because Warner's kind of tied their hands behind their backs a little bit. Like, they were able to reshoot, remake some Adventures of Superman stuff, but they didn't have access to any of the footage from that. They weren't allowed to use the original title. I don't know if you know about this, but the movie was supposed to be called Truth, Justice, and the American Way, which is a much better title.
Josh said that to me, I think.
Yeah, and they weren't allowed to because DC threatened to sue if they used it. And the main reason... But I see both sides to it to some degree. Because Superman Returns comes out the same year. And I think if it had been a year where a Superman movie wasn't coming out, they might not have cared as much. But at least their argument was, I take it with a grain of salt, whether this was the real reason. Of course, you always have to do that with big business stuff. But they claimed that the problem was they didn't want that phrase to be associated with the death of George Reeves before it was associated with Superman himself. Because they're putting out a Superman movie, and by the way, that line is in that movie. So, I mean, there's an argument to be made.
Yeah. Yeah, possibly.
But it's still the right
It's
title.
really interesting that this is a Disney and Universal co-production, with it being Miramax
It's weird, yeah.
Focus.
Yeah, Daniel Davis just said it's actually a Focus Features, but it's also Miramax, right?
Yeah, it's both of them. Disney handled the international release and Universal handled the domestic.
Yeah. But the main reason I'm saying that I wish we had lived in the production of it more is just because I felt like it was, I don't want to say two-dimensional or one note, but I just don't think we delved enough into George Reeves' feelings about actually playing the character versus not wanting to be like trapped in it. You know what I mean? He did it for 6 years. Like, did he find nothing appealing about it? like, did he just phone in every performance? I mean, I haven't seen a ton of that show, but I never got the sense of that watching it. Or is it just that he was supposed to be such a good actor that he could not care and like still exude charisma? I think we kind of needed to spend a little bit of time with him on the set of that show.
Yeah, it would have been cool to have a bit more time on that, especially since it's such a big part.
Well, Josh actually just kind of made the same point I'm making simultaneous with while I was saying it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly, and having more time with those other actors, as he says.
Plus GDX, that's true. We don't get the American Way part in 2006 because I forgot about that in Superman Returns, because even in 2006 we were already too cool for that phrase. That was already outdated, and we're gonna offend people if we say American Way.
Well, that was the point where She's All That was like the big hot release. So they're like, I just say it's all that.
He's going for a percentage, folks. Anyway, Austin, anything else you want to say? I'm assuming you've got a green sign flip on this one.
Yeah, no, I liked this movie quite a bit.
Well, everybody, thanks a lot for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. We're going to watch the movie that George Reeves made. The first thing he did is Superman, right after this. So give us about 10 minutes. We'll come right back. And I know it's super, super late. If you don't want to join us live, you can watch it again later if you're interested in it. That movie is Superman and the Mole Men. It is currently available on Amazon for rent, $2.99 rental. That's how I'm going to do it. And I think I have it on disc somewhere, but I'm gonna watch it that way because I don't know right off where it is, and it would take a while to find it. I think it's in a box set somewhere. But anyway, thanks again for joining us. Next time on the ReQuest, we're gonna be, in case you want to watch the movie with us, we're gonna watch a little movie nobody's ever heard of, requested by John Sandoval, called Dawn of the Dead. I don't know what that is, but that's what we're watching for next time. The original Dawn of the Dead.
That's the first Zack Snyder film.
Oh.
It was written by James Gunn and directed by Zack Snyder.
Why do we have to go to Snyder all the time? And you know what? There's always this connective tissue though between these videos.
Exactly.
Like we had to do two based on a true story historical fiction pieces 2 weeks in a row. Because we did Conspiracy last week, and so now, I almost opened this saying like welcome back to based on a true story reviews, because it seems like that's what we've been doing lately. We're totally joking. We know what Dawn of the Dead is. We're gonna do the original. That's next. I've never seen it. I've seen the original Night of the Living Dead, which I like a lot, but I've never seen Dawn of the Dead, and I know it's nuts.
I only saw it for the first time like 5 months ago. So
okay, well I don't feel so bad about it then.
I watched the original trilogy with John, so it'll actually be good to watch it again without like us talking over it.
I'm excited. I wouldn't have been 5 years ago, but I'll tell you why. Because
you're a zombie guy.
This is a thing that Austin and I have discovered about. I've had this.
I told you that, and you were like, "No, I'm not." And I was like, "Cap, this."
He led me. I had this moment of self-discovery that I am a closeted zombie fan. There's this weird number of things I like, and I always thought zombies I don't care. So all these things that I really like so now I'm much more curious and interested to go back to the basics of that stuff.
Oh, and that movie's great. I'm excited to talk about it.
Anyway, Senior Six says super chat. Was there a super chat we missed?
Sorry
about that. Imagine if Nick Cage was George Reeves.
I would love that.
Yeah, I mean, I
just want Nick Cage as Superman, and not animated.
But I actually think he looks maybe even a little bit more like George Reeves, or could maybe not, than Ben Affleck. I don't know. I don't think Ben Affleck actually looks like George Reeves. But
I've only seen like just that image of him standing there, so I'm like trying to pull that out of the memory somewhere.
But I know we like to think, and we've talked about him recently too, because another review again to connect the tissue. But Nick Cage is an actual like real actor. We think of him as, oh, look at all these crazy things he does, but like I think he could have pulled this off. I actually think Affleck is fine. I think a number of people could have pulled this off. It watches like accidental stunt casting to me. Like, I don't think it actually was. I don't think it was like, let's pick the biggest guy. Obviously, it wasn't. Like, he hadn't done a movie in 2 years. But it kind of watches retroactively, like, here's a name. It's got to be somebody you've seen, you're familiar with. Sort of like Superman
Yeah,
himself.
you don't know the history.
I almost think this movie would have been better served by an unknown, maybe.
Yeah, possibly.
Connor says, "Good luck getting your hands on the original Dawn of the Dead." Oh, is it hard to
You
watch?
can watch it on YouTube. That's how I watched
Okay.
it.
Okay, good to know.
So that film is the opposite of Night of the Living Dead, where Night of the Living Dead's public domain, and Dawn of the Dead is owned by one dude who begrudgingly won't let anybody put it out. So,
What a guy. Thanks, man. All right. Well, anyway, thank you guys so much for watching and listening, and we will see you again next time. And it's really late. I didn't expect this to go quite as long as it did. I'm always making that mistake, but this conversation was too much fun. So we got to some interesting places, Austin.
yeah, we did it.
A lot of meat on the bone there. Anyway, we will see you again soon, and some of you guys hopefully we'll see in a few minutes. I've already got the video or the live show set up, so you can just jump over there right now and get in the comments, and we'll see you in a little bit. Thanks for watching. I was Captain Logan. This was Austin, the Day Ghost.